All right, welcome to the psychology of depression and anxiety. I've got a guest with me here today, Mr. Christoper Spence Pratt. Chris, welcome to the podcast today.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here. First official podcast interview, actually. So I'm excited.
I am very honored to be the first person. I suspect I will not be the last, but the first person hosting you on a podcast. Really quick before we get started today, I just want to let listeners know just a mild content warning. Most likely there will be probably some surface level discussion of suicide in this episode. Nothing detailed or graphic, but I suspect that that word will be said a few times because it is an important part of Chris's story, and it's a really important story that deserves to be told. I know that you are perfectly capable of introducing yourself, but I actually want to introduce our audience to the way that I found you, because the second I saw you, I'm like, I have to talk to that guy at some point. I think I was just kind of mindlessly scrolling on Instagram, as we do sometimes, and your reel, the one that's pinned to the top of your Instagram page, showed up in my recommended. And as I'm sure you know, that the first picture is you at your low point, and it like that, just that picture. I was scrolling, and I just saw that picture. And it just stopped me dead in my tracks. I'm like, oh crap, I know that look. That's
Yeah.
that hollow, empty look. I know that look. I see that look a lot, and with my clients, I've seen that look in the mirror a few times. Like, I know what that is. So I'm like, what is this? Who is this guy? What's going on here? And then the reel, of course, continues with a series of pictures, one every year. And obviously you have an amazing physical transformation throughout these pictures, but what got me even more is just the look on your face every year changes, and it goes from like kind of confusion, like why am I still here, to like cautious optimism, to sort of a full-blown I'm doing this, something's changing here for me. And the main thing I'm hoping to get from you today is just kind of to get a little bit of a roadmap of what got you from that point in that first picture to the Chris that we see today. So if it's okay with you, could we start with 2016 and get a little background on what was going on around that time in your life?
Yeah, absolutely. So so I don't want to ramble, like, I was already 35 years old in that photo from 2016. So there's a lot of life that happened before then. But just a quick synopsis. Early childhood was good. It was around the age of 10, moved to a new city. Yes, I was the new kid. I was small, not so small anymore, but I was small. I was a late bloomer. But anyways, I got picked on. I got bullied a lot. That lasted for 4 years. And I feel like what that did was it planted seeds in my mind, that I was unlovable, that I was had no worth. And the rest of my decision making after that point was based on those feelings. It's like those people who bullied me, I ended up believing it on some level. So let's fast forward to 2016. Well, it's hard to do that. There was a lot of substance abuse before then, a lot of avoidance, a lot of confusion, as you said. My battle didn't begin in 2016. My battle had been going on for a very long time. Unfortunately, a lot of that battle was avoidance, though. Because of the confusion. I wanted to believe I was worthwhile, but then on some levels, I really believed I was not. And so, throw substance abuse into that. That's never going to work out well. My substance abuse mostly was alcohol, but there were a lot of drugs mixed in too. So anyways, fast forward 2016, I had reached rock bottom, as they say. That's the term. And I just felt hopeless. There was no hope. There was no light at all. It was pure darkness. the idea of a light was not even like, I couldn't even fathom that. Um, and it was in that time that I had suicidal ideations almost my entire life. And it was at that point that I was actually seriously considering them as an option. And I acted on them. And again, there's no reason to go into the gory details, but I went of overdose. I tried to overdose off pills and was almost successful, but I was saved. And it was just I look back on that experience now, and we'll get into this with like further questions and as we talk, but I look back on that experience of the actual attempt to take my life, and I'm like, I can't believe I did that, man. Like, who was that guy that was so hopeless that he thought that was the only option? So that was the beginning of my journey. It sounds like a weird way to begin a journey. It's like surviving a suicide attempt is the way to begin your journey. For me, it was. I hope that that's not the way that, I would never tell somebody, oh, well, you got to get to a suicidal point.
Right. Of course not.
I would hope that they would have some sort of hope before that. But for me, that was my rock bottom. And I'm not sure if I'm answering the question correctly.
Oh, you absolutely are. And so I know you and I talked about this a little before too. One thing that I think is really important about kind of your backstory, because I know a lot of people will relate to this, is that you've described, like you said, you had a good childhood. And I think that like that's so important because a lot of people out there who are dealing with depression and dealing with anxiety, it's not because just from the beginning their life has been awful. I think that's what a lot of people think. That's kind of a stereotype, like, oh, if you feel you must have just dealt with like trauma after trauma to be able to get to the point where you feel this way. And it's a really unhelpful stereotype, because then when people are dealing with those feelings and they have, I mean, obviously you faced significant adversity in the form of bullying, but overall, like you had periods of life that were really good, and sometimes that actually makes us feel worse, because then it's like how do I feel this bad when I've had things fairly good overall compared to some people? So I think knowing that you would describe like a fairly happy and good childhood for the most part, I think is a really important part of that backstory.
It made the bullying more confusing, actually, because the first 10 years of my childhood were happy. I had friends, I was doing well in school. And then we moved, there was a shift, moved to a new state, new place, new people, and I couldn't make friends and nobody liked me. And I didn't understand why. And, in retrospect, I look back on, well, did I bring that upon myself in some way? I've always been a sensitive person. So, that doesn't mean I deserved it or anything. But, people prey on certain things, especially children. I forgive all my bullies, by the way, because kids are kids. And, I think because I've always been a sensitive, vulnerable sort of person, it made me a prime target for getting bullied. On top of like, yeah, I was small, but anyone who bullies or is critical of other people, they're going to get more out of it if they know it's affecting the person. It definitely affected me, and they could see that. So,
the other thing you said that I kind of latched onto was like that your suicide attempt was the start of a new beginning for you, and I do think that for a lot of people who have really dramatic transformations in their lives of some kind or another, like, I was on this one path for some certain amount of time, and then in a relatively short period of time I'm now on this completely different path. Almost everybody I know who has had these big changes, these big transformations, which you certainly have, in one way or another, I feel like every single example I can think of that they've been like shocked into it somehow, right? Sometimes it was like a near-death experience, or like a divorce or a job loss, but some big on it, maybe like tragic thing happened, and it just it's kind of a make or break moment, and you were able to turn it into a make moment, or at least the start of one. Maybe that's where we could go next, because I definitely want to know. So like that first year after, the rest of 2016, 2017, it sounds like that's when you started to make some pretty big changes in your life. Could you tell us what some of those changes were that you feel like started you on the path that you've been on these last few years?
So when I survived my suicide attempt, it's like, I was, it's like I knew it was going to hurt people, my family, but I didn't realize how much until I failed my attempt. And I was surrounded by, my brothers and my parents, and I could see the effects of my behavior, and it was painful to me. I'm like, what am I doing? And if I had succeeded, it would have affected them for the rest of their lives in a terrible, terrible way. And I went, well, geez, clearly these people really care about me, actually. And I don't know if I'd ever really thought about that before. I will get into this as we're talking, but practicing gratitude is something I had never done before. And that might have been the first thing I went, well, geez, I'm grateful that these people love me. Maybe I've been too focused on all these other external sources. Like, where am I trying to, another thing we'll get into, where does happiness actually come from? So survived the attempt, saw the pain it caused. And at that point, I kind of was just, I had a shift in my mindset. I'm like, okay, well, that was a bad idea. I don't want to inflict this kind of pain. I asked for help. Finally. And without going into tons of details, I had been a belligerent drunk for probably about 5 years. I destroyed a marriage. And it's, again, I like being honest. So I wasn't physically abusive, but there was, when I was belligerently drunk, I could be emotionally volatile and say things that were terrible. And I said things to my ex-wife that I'm not proud of. Very, it's emotional abuse. And to me, I had to come back to this. I didn't realize in my marriage that I was abusive. I absolutely was abusive. And I will always regret that. But, only one thing we can do, move forward, don't learn from our mistakes. So I do everything different, man. To answer your question, I was like, I will do everything. I need help. I was like, I went to my dad, thankfully, because they had kind of cut me off, actually. But after this attempt, he's standing over me. He's like, what are you doing? I said, I don't know. That was, honestly, it was the answer. I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing. I said, I need help. Like, please, will be eternally grateful to my parents. And I know some people don't have that sort of support. They were willing to help me. So I had some people in my corner, actually. It would be nice if everybody had some people in their corner. I said, I need help. I can't, drinking was my top thing. I needed to eliminate that. I'm not going to get better when I'm drinking massive amounts of whiskey every freaking day. So I asked for help. I said, is there somewhere, you just send me somewhere? Send me somewhere. Like, is there like a place I can go? And so, yeah, that was the very first thing I did. Was I went to a rehab center, an inpatient rehab center, for 30 days, which, to be honest, is not that long. And a lot of people go into those 30 days and they come right back out and drop right off. Now, alcoholism was a huge problem for me, but I really don't think that was the root problem. That was just an avoidance tactic. So, but I knew I needed to eliminate that. it was really because I'm prone to rambling. Let me come back a little bit. Um, the main thing I decided to do was to do everything differently. I opened myself to suggestion as well. A lot of my life I was defensive. I didn't want anybody to tell me how to do anything. Why can't you just leave me alone? You know, people, I think you need some help. You might have a problem. Why don't you mind your own business? I finally had that rock bottom and said, I don't know what I'm doing. I need help. It's almost like I was like, tell me what to do. Please, someone just tell me what to do. Everything I've been doing is not working for me. I am not happy. I've been miserable forever. So why do I keep trying? I am not solving the problem. And that opened me up, just opening up in that way to where I was open to suggestion, allowed me to do a lot of things that I wouldn't have done before, like going to a therapist or actually listening to people who might have some words of advice to how I could be happy. I didn't think it was possible to be happy. I really did not. There was no light in the darkness. And I realized that as well after the suicide attempt was, have I ever even tried to be happy? I don't know. I've been so convinced that wasn't a real thing for me that I don't think I've ever actually tried. Yeah, so I'll let you chime in now, but
Sure.
it was just mainly opening myself to help.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like, tell me if this is a fair summary. It sounds like maybe step one was realizing what you were doing wasn't getting you where you wanted to be. Step two, ask for help. And I know we're just kind of getting started on this, but step three was almost just kind of flip everything you'd been doing like 180 degrees in the other direction. Is that about right?
Yeah, I call it the opposite game.
It's funny that you say that because as you were describing this, what I was thinking is, oh, he used opposite to emotion, which is, I don't know if you know, you probably wouldn't have called it that, but it's from
No,
DBT, dialectical behavior therapy. So the idea behind opposite, like you just described it in just your own words, which is kind of amazing, really. But opposite to emotion is a therapeutic technique that involves recognizing that most of our emotional states are self-sustaining, meaning like when you're depressed, for example, you do things or at least experience urges or impulses to do things that make you feel more depressed. Like when we're depressed, we don't want to connect with people, right? We tend to isolate ourselves. We tend to stick to ourselves, but then we feel lonely, which makes us more depressed. When
yeah,
we're anxious, right, it makes us want to avoid things. But and it's true with positive emotions too. Like when you're feeling really proud of yourself, you tend to go do things. You accomplish things. So the impulses that your emotions create lead to behaviors that then strengthen the emotion that created the behavior. And so opposite to emotion involves taking whatever your impulse is when it comes from an emotion you want less of, like depression, for example, and then doing the opposite of the thing you feel like doing. So if I feel like isolating myself, I'm going to call 5 friends, I'm going to call 5 people, text 5 people. Like I'm going to put myself as out there as I possibly can. If I feel like not not taking my medication today, I'm gonna take it exactly as prescribed. If I feel like not eating, I'm gonna nourish my body. If I feel like not moving, I'm gonna go for a walk or go work out. So it's basically do the opposite of what you want to do, and you'll get the opposite of the feeling you have. Does that make
that's
sense?
exactly. Yeah, it's exactly what I was doing without realizing that it was like a therapeutic technique or anything like. No, because I haven't heard of what you're talking about, but um, somehow I sort of just it clicked in my brain. I was like, I just need to start doing the opposite of everything my own mind is telling me to do.
You intuited a therapy skill. That's kind of, just so you know, that's a very impressive thing to do. That doesn't happen very often.
It was just the realization that everything I had been doing was not working for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, maybe I should just, anytime that like inner voice kicks in and tells me, you don't want to do that, I should start doing it. which is the complete opposite of what I was doing before. I was just listening to it. Oh, you don't want to do that, Chris. You're just going to fail anyways. Nobody, you won't succeed, Chris. And I'd be like, yeah, you're right. This time I'm like, no, this means I need to do it, because everything I've been listening to you for a long time, and you haven't helped me. So I still struggle with that now. Earlier, before we started recording, procrastination, I still struggle with it. But yeah, so I'm glad I figured that out, because it is helpful. We can be our worst enemy. I know I was. It's like that part of me wanted to keep me in that pit of despair. That was its sole goal. Why I've come to learn in the last like 7 years that I had no idea, man, but I do now. Most people are suffering from trauma on some level.
Absolutely.
And I never realized that. I'm like, geez, you know what? I think trauma is much more prevalent than I ever realized it was. And that causes us to behave in certain ways. Our decision making is affected by these things that we may not even realize are trauma. We push them down, they go into the darkness, but they still affect us. It's crazy, man.
What you said about something else that really struck me just reading your content, and then you said it again today too, is like that you never really tried to be happy until like a few years ago. And I would say the same thing for my rock bottom was probably more late adolescence, so it came at a different time in my life. But I remember I had a moment where I'm like, what if I took all the energy, because my emotional state was always like, I wouldn't say I was doing it on purpose, but my brain would just always find every possible flaw in everything. Like I was the most, keep in mind, I'm a therapist, so I talk to like people with depression and anxiety and whatnot all day long, right? I still say I may be the most pessimistic person I've ever met, like on the inside.
Yeah.
My moments of happiness were like just these occasional little periods when I couldn't find anything wrong. Like, and I had this thought one time, like, what if I took all the energy that I use to find every little flaw in it, all people suck, the world sucks, I suck, everything's stupid. That was, my mindset. It's like, what if I took that energy and tried to use all of that to build a life that I did not hate? And I was like, I've never tried that. I should probably at least try that. I was kind of like you. It's like, it's probably
Very
not going to work, but like I should try just to see what happens, right? Turns out it actually makes a difference.
absolutely. Yeah, I know. It seems like a real it's like the more, I don't know if common sense exists actually. What do you think about common sense? I've heard
Man,
my whole life, well, common sense would dictate, and I'm like, I don't even know if that's a real thing.
so something I actually wrote in my first book is that if you try to apply what most people would consider common sense to building a life that makes you happy, you will probably not succeed, because there are a lot of counterintuitive processes in our brain. For example, what happens if you try really hard to fall asleep? You get insomnia, because stress, when you try really hard to do something, you're introducing stress into your system, and stress is not conducive to sleep. So the harder you try to sleep, the less likely you are to sleep. Or sometimes that happens in relationships too. Like sometimes we feel so strongly about someone that we chase them away. We try too hard, So many of our goals are somewhat counterintuitive. But one place that common sense is real is you're not probably going to have a happy life if you do not try to have a happy life. And I think that's something we both learned the hard way, didn't we?
I agree with you on that. No, you have to try. It's not going to magically fall into your lap. And I think I was waiting for it to fall into my lap for a long time. Not happening.
I was just going to say, you mentioned like early on setting goals was something that was really important to you. And you said prior to 2017, 2018, you hadn't really been like a goal oriented person. Do you remember what some of those earlier goals you set were that really got you into this, like, oh, maybe I can do this, maybe I can succeed at these things mindset? What were some of the first dominoes to fall?
So mm, I've, not to sound egotistical, but most of my life I have felt that I'm fairly intelligent, at least. Um, I had been able to learn things fairly well, do things fairly well. Um, but I don't know if those were like goal oriented. Those were more just like, well, this interests me. I'm going to learn how to do this. Um, but I never went, I'm setting a goal and I'm going to accomplish it until later in life. So 2016, first goal obviously was to remove my dependence on alcohol because my alcoholism was severe. It was daily. My breakfast was whiskey. I'd wake up and drink. Again, it was all avoidance. I was desperately trying to avoid emotional turmoil. And alcohol's a depressant. That's not going to help. Each year that I kept getting worse and worse, my depression kept getting worse and worse. So that was the very first goal. And once I felt like that was sort of, at least stable, I'm like, okay, I'm not drinking anymore. What else can I do? And I was very unhappy with, I was very unhappy with the way I looked. I had been stagnant physically many, many, many years. I work in IT, so I sit in front of a computer all day. So I had been sitting in front of a computer all day. When I wasn't working in computers, I was playing video games all day. More avoidance. And I think it was about a month or two into sobriety. I was getting into the shower one day and I sort of just looked into the mirror and I'm like, who's that, man? Like, how did this happen?
Mhm.
And I thought, that immediately was like, okay, I gotta do something. Like, it wasn't even like, ew, look at fat Chris. It was more just like, look at how unhealthy you are.
Mm-hmm.
You're so unhealthy. Um, I need to take my health seriously. And I thought, okay, like because I'm huge into bodybuilding now, but that wasn't the initial goal, actually. The initial goal was just to be healthy. And I thought, I got to start watching what I'm eating. I've been living off of fast food for years. I've been living off of alcohol and fast food for years. Top ramen, grilled cheese sandwiches, Jack in the Box every day. And then not moving. No wonder I was depressed. So I started, I got a gym membership and I started lifting weights and doing cardio and learning that and watching my diet. And I wasn't super like diet has to be 100% on point, but I was like, just bring healthier things in. Watch your caloric intake. What do you get a rough estimate? What are you eating every day? Just pay attention.
No
My
worries.
primary goal was self-awareness. I need to go into the depths of myself and take responsibility for every single thing that's happened in my life.
Mm. Wow.
Was I victimized? Sure. Did things outside of my control happen? Sure. But I still felt like I needed to take responsibility for everything that happened in my life. Accountability. Accountability is huge. So it's like, I don't know. Could something terrible happen to me in the future that wasn't my fault? Sure. But I feel like it's really important to be accountable. That was a huge shift in my mindset to escape victimhood, which I have talked about in some older videos. I feel like 35 years of my life, I pretty much was living in this like victim state where everything had been done to me. People did it to me. God did it to me. The universe did it to me. Who knows? It was always somebody else's fault that my life sucked. So that shifted. And I was like, maybe it's my fault that my life sucks. So what can I do about it? And that was goal setting. Fitness was important though.
Mm-hmm.
It gave me something I could control. And I think I felt a huge lack of control. It's like, well, I can control these heavy weights. I don't know. Am I answering your question? You're going to hear that.
Absolutely. You are dropping some serious wisdom. And I think it's going to be, I think it's going to be really useful to a lot of people. Because what you're describing here, essentially, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but so tell me if this sounds right, is you went from like what I would call kind of a passive observer of life, like your life was something that was happening to you. You know,
Yeah.
things just happened, and your lifestyle and the way you lived, and almost everyone has done this, like, is you're just a result of that. And
Yeah.
then you made this mindset shift and you said, no, I'm going to be an active participant in my life. And even though
Yes.
I can't control every single thing that happens to me, I do have much more influence over the quality of my life and the outcomes of my decisions than what I've been applying, basically. And I'm going to change that. I'm going to work on making my body healthy, which nutrition and physical activity, those two, and sleep. I usually tell people those are the three things. Those should be the starting point of almost anyone's mental health journey, in my opinion. And that surprises people a lot, because a lot of people don't even think of those as mental health interventions. But it's very difficult, I would say impossible, really, probably, to have a healthy mind in an unhealthy body. And if you're
Okay.
exhausted and malnourished and completely sedentary, then your brain does not get what it needs. And no matter how many therapy techniques you try to apply, no matter how mindful you are and how much you practice gratitude and how much you challenge thoughts, if your brain does not have the basic building blocks that it needs to function optimally, especially if you have any kind of underlying predisposition to something like depression or anxiety, you need to give your brain everything it needs if you want to be able to get where you want to be in life. And so, yeah, no, that's what I heard you describe, is that shift from life happens to me to I'm going to try my best to make my life be what I want it to be, and how you take responsibility without going to blame. And that's another really impressive thing. And that's a part of your story that I love, is you were able to kind of find this middle ground. I've seen people take that too far, where it's like, yeah, okay, so what if my life sucks because of me? Well, that means I'm an even worse person than I thought. Now I feel even more depressed.
Yeah.
There's a point where that's helpful, and there's a point where it becomes unhelpful, and you were able to stop it right at the point where it becomes fuel and motivation, and stop it from becoming like shame. And I think that's really impressive.
Yeah, you're right. I don't know if I've ever actually thought about it that way. I'm glad I didn't go that direction and start like shaming myself. Oh, what a loser. This is all my fault. What a freaking loser, man. I was just like, well, okay, maybe it is. Enough is enough. Time to move forward for once. My whole shift was I realized about myself that I was a pessimist. Very cynical. Everything was negative. It was doom and gloom all the time. And again, that's where I started trying to do this opposite game thing. I'm like, okay, well, so when you feel that way, Chris, is there anything positive about this situation? Because I'd never asked myself that before. Well, what positive things could come from this situation that you see so negatively? It was always just doom and gloom before. Now it's broaden the spectrum a bit. Okay, yeah, that's true. Maybe there is a lot of negativity to this event, but what are the pros that could potentially come from this event? And if I don't move forward and perform this event, oh, well, then those pros won't happen. It's always just going to be doom and gloom. It's like, I have regrets, but I try not to sit in them. What's that going to do for me? This whole stagnation thing, I've already stagnated enough. So it's like, yeah, I have regrets. I've done things in my life I'm not proud of. I can't time travel into the past and fix those things I'm not proud of. All I can do is try to be a better person now. And, easier said than done.
Absolutely.
But it can be done.
It can. And I think that's so important. And I love what you say about stagnation, because I think you and I are driven by very similar factors. When I look back on my life, there's this period of several years in my life that's basically just a black hole. I mean, I remember it. It's not like I have no memory of it. It's just that there was nothing memorable that happened. It was just years of nothing important, nothing really good, little moments here and there, but nothing of value. And I don't ever want to have another period like that again. That's what drives me every day. I wake up and I think, I don't ever want to feel that way again. So I'm going to do what I need to do today to stay away from that, because I know that somewhere deep inside me is the capability to go there again. It's still there. It's back there a ways, but it's not. I haven't defeated the demon. I've just put 4 or 5 miles on him at this point. If I let my guard down, it could happen again. So I'm just not going to do that. And I think you get that.
Oh yeah, I'm the my demons. How I talk about it is like they had me shackled before. I have them shackled now.
Yeah,
but they're still there, and they can escape from those shackles. I have to be cognizant. I have to be really. This is the self-awareness part. You probably saw some of my videos. 2022 was actually not a good year for me.
Yeah,
I was really struggling. Things are good now. I got through it. I had the tools. I knew how to get through it, but it came back, and I never thought it was going to come back. Because it's like 2016, 2017, I started feeling better. 2018, better. 2019, 2020, 2021, I was feeling great. I'm like, I escaped. I never thought it was possible. Then 2022 rolled around, and I was like, oh no, this again. Not this again. I thought I got away from it. That was when I started sharing more videos and content. It was cathartic in a way. It was helping me. Being of service to other people is really rewarding. And I thought, I'm really struggling right now. I've learned a lot of things over these years. Maybe I could, I don't know, what's the social media stuff? Maybe I could help people. And apparently it's done that. I only need to help one person. It's still there.
Good.
It'll never go away, man. I know that they're there, and I have to, the work, it probably will sound exhausting to some people, but it never ends. It really doesn't. It gets easier. It's harder in the beginning, and it gets easier. Peaks and valleys in life.
Absolutely.
So you get to the top of one mountain, you got to go back down, and then it's like you got to go back up another mountain. And these are cliches, but they ring true to me usually. But that's the journey is the most important part.
I'm just going to repeat something that you said, because I want to make sure everybody hears this twice, because that was when you said it, like something clicked in my brain. You said, my demons used to have me shackled, and now I have them shackled. That visual, that is a powerful visual. I think a lot of people will understand one of those phases, if not both. It also would make a great metal album cover.
Yeah, it would. Yeah, I guess for those who don't know, we both like metal.
Absolutely.
Metal has done a lot for me, to be honest.
So tell us more about that. I'd love to hear more about that.
It's funny because and I've always listened to a lot of different genres of metal, not always death metal. I actually really like cheesy power metal too. It's flying dragons and knights and stuff like that.
Gotta love it.
It's funny because a lot of the metal I like, and it's funny even if you get into like death metal, and there's probably people who are going to listen to this and like, what the heck are these guys talking about? A lot of it, even if it you read the lyrics, it appears like depressing and sad. There's actually like great wisdom in a lot of it. And even how death metal, sometimes people hear it and they're like, ugh. But if you look at the lyrics and what they're talking about, a lot of the time, it's not necessarily in a negative light about death. It's about wounds, healing wounds, just darker things, but there's wisdom within it. So metal has been very inspirational to me. I'm not saying metal's the only type of music where you can find inspiration, but it's been inspirational to me. I mean, I've always kind of been a rocker dude. So there's a lot of strength in metal. So that's why it's really spoken to me. Even in times where I wasn't doing well and I was not exhibiting much strength at all, I did find strength within the music, and it helped. It probably, to be honest, probably helped me make it as long as I did, because I had a lot of suicidal thoughts from teenage years on. You got to find inspiration where you can find inspiration, and metal really spoke to me. So I found a lot of inspiration in that. But to anybody listening, find it where you can find it. Find what speaks to you.
Yeah, for me, metal, I think what always drew me to metal is that it validated a lot of feelings that I had anyway, that I didn't necessarily get to talk to people about, especially when I was younger. And I love, a lot of the songs would be very, very blunt about laying some real struggles out there. But my favorite songs were always kind of like you said, the ones that there was still strength or like positivity or optimism. Like, yeah, people can go through this kind of thing. and come out okay. I mean, I think a lot like the conversation we're having today, like we're not shying away from the heavier topics or the darker topics, but we're also making sure to let people know like it doesn't have to stay that way. And I think that's a lot of metal kind of captures that same vibe. At least it does for me. A lot of the different subgenres too. Like I had a phase, and I still kind of to some degree, where I was really into black metal, which like
Yeah.
lyrically sometimes is extremely dark, but a lot of the music, at least to me, and that was a very subjective thing, is just gorgeous in my opinion. And it's like that dichotomy of like you hear what this person is saying, but if the music is this intricate and delicate, I know it's a weird word for metal, but it fits sometimes. It's like there must be something good in this if you can make this music while talking about this. I don't know. That's kind of a weird me thing,
Yeah,
maybe.
no, black metal's interesting in the regard that like they're talking about some what some people would probably consider evil. Um, but the music is beautiful and it's very operatic and it's very a lot of the time I talk to people about so the very first music I ever fell in love with as a child, and even my parents thought it was weird, was classical music.
Hmm.
I loved classical music. I loved it. I feel like there's a lot of correlation there's between heavy metal music and classical music.
There is.
And
That's actually been like scientifically demonstrated. I don't know how they broke it down, but classical music in terms of like song structure and things like that, it is the most similar genre to metal. They share more in common than metal does to anything else. So you're absolutely right about that.
yeah, I mean, you can listen to you like a shredding electric guitar solo, and it could mimic like a violin or a piano.
Mhm.
So um, it, I went, I don't, I, I don't listen to black metal as much as I used to actually.
That's
Um,
fair.
but I do have a respect for it. Something you made me realize something though that I didn't mention about metal, and that was I think earlier in life, it was good in the sense I would find relatability in the songs. I'd be like, oh man, these guys get what I'm talking about. But I didn't realize that I didn't need to stay there. I'm like, this song is speaking to me about what I'm going through. Yeah, they get it. I was almost like, yes, depression. They get my depression. But do you get what I'm saying? Like, I
Absolutely.
stayed in it though. I was just like,
Absolutely.
they get it. This is my song now. But then I stayed in it. I don't think that that was actually the purpose of the song. Really, was to for people to stay in it. It's almost like, hey, we get it. Do something about it. Almost.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's how I felt about a lot of the music I was drawn to as well. The first album that I ever owned, I think I was like 8 or 9, and this will explain a lot about me. But it was Black Sabbath, self-titled. That was the first. Like I remember my parents took me to this record store, and they're like, within reason, I think, although I clearly tested that. They're like, "It's your first album. Buy anything you want." And I'm like, "I want this one." And I remember they were like, okay, I guess that's all. I mean, yeah, man, I'm glad I didn't have to parent me. That's been a
Yeah.
that's been one of my later in life revelations now that I have kids. I'm like, I was a hard kid. Anyway, something else I want to get your take on, because I know it's been a huge part of your journey, and you've talked a little bit about it, but I want to know a little bit more about the mental transformation that you've experienced from your physical fitness journey. Because I know you've said the mental changes from being physically active have been more important to you than the physical changes, the ones you could see in your body. Could you say a little bit more about that?
Yeah, the physical changes are nice, of course. Like everyone likes to look better. But that's not the primary reason I've stuck with it or been able to stay committed. So, from an early age, I'd heard, and I'm sure you've heard, and most people have, like, if you exercise, it makes you feel better. And I was like, that sounds miserable. I don't want to do that. Sounds like a lot of work. Hard work has the greatest rewards, which I'd also heard and for some reason didn't believe until later in life. As I started really committing to exercise, I started noticing I felt happier. It's very simple. There's not a whole lot to it. I just was like, geez, I feel less stressed. I don't have as much anxiety. I don't feel quite as bogged down by some dark cloud. I think I'm going to stick with this. And yeah, I'd heard people kept telling me I'd feel better, and I guess they were right. But on top of that, it is a goal, and my goal was health. And I of course I wanted to look better. I didn't like the way I looked. I felt insecure. I destroyed my body. And as I started seeing results in the mirror, that further pushed me like, oh man, like hard work does pay off. I am seeing results now. And I feel better about myself because most of my life I did not have a lot of confidence. And that goes back to the bullying. Believed I had no value. I believed I had no worth. Over the years of that abuse at a young age, I just clung to those thoughts and I couldn't escape them, which they still affect me. I feel like those things will affect me until the day I die, but I don't need to believe them.
Right.
It's coming to terms with something that happened and then using it as a source of strength instead, moving forward. I don't, those little voices will creep in and I have to go, nope, get away. Mm-hmm. Not true. Fitness has been instrumental. And when I say fitness, I mean like eating better, mm-hmm. not living off processed foods all the time. And so it's exercise and diet. They go hand in hand. So mm-hmm. anyone listening, you hear the word fitness, it's not just working out, it's a diet too. Like mm-hmm. I'm not saying you can't have ice cream from time to time and cookies and things like that, but sometimes I worry about saying everything in moderation too, because I feel like that might be open to interpretation. Trying to live as healthy as you can, but don't be so strict on yourself that you're on, because you can go too hard in that direction.
Oh, absolutely. I see people with that problem.
You have to find that balance. And my goals have been, because I got really into bodybuilding, and it's like, I want to put as much muscle mass on as possible. Well, that's not everybody's goal. Like, what are your goals? And you figure those out. Everyone's goals are different. So I would never try to push my goals on someone else. It's not overly complex, though. It's like exercise does make you feel better. Like, I think our bodies are made for moving.
So they absolutely are. Yeah. Our bodies and our brains. And something you basically just said it, but I'm just going to reiterate it. Something else that's fantastic about exercise is exercise as a tool for your mental health, like as a component of treatment for depression and anxiety. It does not discriminate by format. So you and I, we both enjoy weight training. That's fine. Some people hate weight training. If you're a runner, run. If you're a swimmer, swim. If you're a basketball player, go play basketball. The physical changes that happen inside you when you're physically active, that create the mental changes that we're talking about here, they don't care what kind of exercise you're doing. So if you think weight training is miserable, you don't have to listen to us and be like, oh, but I don't want to weight train. I think cardio is miserable personally, and I don't do that very often. To each their own, right?
Yeah, cardio is not my go-to. I do it when it supports my goals, but no, I prefer weightlifting. No, I'd still say, again, it comes back to every individual's goals. If they enjoy yoga, do yoga. Get into yoga. You like Pilates, do Pilates. But move your body. I guess that's the answer. Is a lot of my stagnation was sitting around not moving. We have these bodies. Like, I don't think we're just supposed to sit around all day not moving. That's what I was doing for many years, was sitting around not moving. So yeah, gotta get that blood pumping.
Well, I got two last quick questions for you, and then we should probably wrap up for today. But we were talking in between that we may do a part 2 here, so keep an eye out for that. Second to last question is, other than what we've already talked about, just if there was anything you wanted people who have listened today and who relate to parts of your story to know. Is there any final words or like take-home message that you want to make sure that people get from what you've been through and where you're at right now?
So when I was in my dark place, I was not really open to hearing anything. And I realized that a lot of people are probably like this. Say my peak point of depression, my like future self had come back to me to talk to me and was like, you don't have to be this way, Chris. You do have some control. I would have probably said, get the hell out of here. You don't know what you're talking about. That's where I find this question difficult. I guess it's coming from like a point of like empathy, where I'm trying to think about how can I help someone who's like in the depths of it, and what sort of advice could I give that would help wake them up. But then again, I realized that I don't think we can truly ever save anyone. We have to save ourselves. So I end up giving the basic answer, which is like, it doesn't have to be this way. There is hope, and you may not feel it right now. I didn't feel it at all, but we do have some control of our lives. There are a lot of uncontrollable things. I feel like a lot of the universe feels like chaos sometimes, but we do have some control. And if you can grab onto that small amount of control, like it's enough to shift your mindset, because I think that is ultimately the problem here. It was for me. I can't speak for everyone, but I think that we get stuck in certain mindsets and we think about everything in one way. Depression for me was like, if you're depressed, are you positive? Probably not. It's hard to find positive things. I mentioned earlier in the podcast, one thing to practice, and a lot of the time it does sound cliche, but like gratitude, saying, yeah, I'm miserable. I hate life. It sucks. But is there anything I'm grateful for? Am I happy about anything? People, events? Did something good happen in my life at some point? Oh geez, there was that summer back in where, yeah, that was nice. It helps kind of pull you out of that tunnel vision a little bit, where everything's bad. Oh, you only need a little bit of good to help kind of, all right, well, maybe there could be more good. That good happened. It takes work though. I don't have the answers. I can't, again, save anybody, but anybody listening, like, it'll take a little bit of work, but it's worth putting the work in. You don't have to stay this way. If you're feeling depressed, all I've wanted to do is, I wish I had the answer. I really wish I had the answer for people. Like, this is the way to do it. Just listen to me and your life will change.
I think you have given an answer though, but because like you said this is a basic answer. I know, but here's the thing. I think a lot of the time, whether things like what you've said sound like basic and cliche or meaningful, depends on who is saying them. And when somebody who has kind of always been okay says like it can be okay, it's like, yeah, for you, not for me. I'm different than you. You're okay, I'm not. I'll never be like you. But when somebody who because you've heard their story, because you've seen pictures, someone who gets it and has felt the way that you have felt, or at least something very close to it, says, no, really, like, if you put the work in and adopt the mindset and just try, it can be okay. And that person comes from a place like where you come from. I don't think it's basic when it comes from that person. And that's been the whole point of this podcast, is that you are one of those people that you weren't just gifted an automatically happy brain that shrugs off every problem you face. You and me and a lot of other people out there, we hold on to stuff. Things hurt us a little bit more easily, and we don't just recover from everything automatically. We got to put work in to get to this place. And that's, yeah, like you said, there's no like one simple, clickbait answer. I think that's the short answer. You have to want it, you have to try, and you have to have a shred of belief. You don't have to be like, I know it's going to work, but like you said, you just got to have something. One thing in your life that at one point was worth living for. Could you have that again, or something like it? So I think you gave a fantastic answer.
To further expand on it real quick. Just small shreds, but they multiply. If you can cling to those small shreds and go, well, this is enough reason for me to push forward and try a little bit harder, you will be rewarded. At least I was. Sometimes it may not seem like it's paying off. It's not like a immediate payoff sometimes. And I think we live in a society where people want instant gratification all the time. It's not instant gratification, but it pays off. And yeah, I suppose the relatability aspect, I wanted to die. I absolutely wanted to die. I was not happy when I survived my suicide attempt. I was very upset, but now I can look back and say, damn, I'm glad I didn't succeed, because I have a lot of happiness now, which I never thought was possible. And it was with hard work, but it all started with mindset shifts. Like, can I be happy? Have I tried to be happy? What am I grateful for? So, anybody who wants like a magic wand or magic pill fix, it's not a thing. It does require work, but it is worth it. And that's what I always try to tell people, like, stick with it, push through it. You're like, I hate my life. Today sucks. I don't want to do anything. Don't listen to it and do it anyways. And it will pay off. I swear to God, it will pay off.
That answer is 100% congruent with everything I've experienced in life. So it is very appreciated. One last question for you today. Where can listeners find you if they want more of your story or want to stay in touch with you? Where are you active out there in the social media world?
Instagram is where most of my followers are. That's ValiantFate.
I'll be linking people to it too. Yeah.
I've got a YouTube channel. They're all ValiantFate. YouTube's ValiantFate. Facebook is ValiantFate. TikTok is ValiantFate. But Instagram is probably the main place where you're going to find. That's the community for me, really. I haven't spent a lot of time on the other social media platforms. I'm trying, but
Chris, thank you so much for coming on today. This has been, I think, a fantastic conversation. I think people will get a lot of value out of it, and I'm really looking forward to doing a potential round 2 with you.
Yeah, man, I'm happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me. I'm definitely down for another episode because we can go a lot deeper. So
yeah, I think we're just barely getting started. Take care. Great to talk to you, and we'll talk soon. All right.
You, bro. Take it easy.